we wanted to switch gears and have a different conversation because there are a number of people that may be experiencing this situation where you're feeling you're just not happy. Life seems to be burdening you. You feel like there's a weight on your shoulders. There's so much that we have to think about, so much that we have to deal with. And so we wanted to have a conversation about happiness. What does it actually mean? And is it a goal that we should all strive to achieve? Well, I know a sister that has studied what it means to be happy. She actually got a PhD in this study. She's known as the happiness scholar, and we're happy to have her on the airwaves of the Black Star Network here on The Culture, Dr. Kortni Alston. Good afternoon, Doc. How are you?
Good afternoon. Well, that introduction made me pretty happy there, Farajii.
First thing, you got a big smile on your face, so life must be good for you right now.
Life is wonderful. It is wonderful.
Good. All right, Doc, let's talk a little bit about happiness because, this is interesting. I don't think, first, before we talk about this latest poll that Gallup has put out there, I don't think people understand that you studied happiness. And what does that actually mean? How did you get a PhD in understanding happiness?
Well, it's interesting. When I tell people I'm a happiness scholar, they say, what? What is that, right?
No, Kortni. Come on, Kortni. They'd be like, what the hell is that?
What is that? I'm like, oh, I never thought it would be such a pause when when people hear that, right? But yeah, my PhD is actually from the College of Journalism and Communications at the University of Florida, and my area of research focuses in on positive psychology. And so positive psychology is a scientific study of optimal human flourishing and really the science of what we do well and how we build in terms of our resilience, in terms of it as it relates to life satisfaction. So yeah, I actually stumbled on happiness while I was working on my PhD at the University of Florida. And I'm so happy that I did, because it has taught me a lot in regards to not only as relates to happiness in terms of the research, right? But it also has been really fulfilling in regards to my own life as well.
Well, and I'm so happy that you said that, that you explained that even more. So Kortni, what have you found in your research and in your study that about happiness? Because we often use that as the ultimate goal. I want to be happy. You know what I mean? Like if we're talking about relationships, we're talking about being in jobs, we're talking about just living in a certain place. The ultimate goal seems to be, I just want to be happy. And then we also play the victim when it comes to happiness by saying, well, what's wrong with just being happy? Because we make these decisions based on what we think will lead to our ultimate happiness. Is this the right way? Or are we kind of like working towards a good place, or does this take us into a much more place of uncertainty?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, Farajii, because when I'm talking about happiness and sharing different evidence-based strategies to help serve individuals and organizations, because much of my work is as a happiness scholar is actually going and helping organizations in regards to workplace well-being. But it's interesting, even when I'm facilitating those trainings and I'm being asked about questions as it relates to happiness, I often share how, I'm a happiness scholar, but I'm not happy 24 hours a day, right? Because, things do happen. Life happens. And matter of fact, my TED Talk talks about how really my happiness journey as relates to working my dream job. I'm a former television reporter and news director. And so how I work my dream job in television in the fourth largest market in the country, being in Philadelphia, and how I became a widow 86 days of marriage. So my late husband and I were only married for 86 days, but together for about 7-8 years prior to that. And his death made news all throughout Philadelphia, all throughout the country, because of the uniqueness of how he died. He was accidentally shot by his business partner and friend, and he was killed right there in the store. And so I say all that to say is that when I share that, people go, "Oh my gosh, wow! So you were a young widow. You're a young widow." And I say, "Yeah, so I've gone through situations in my life, but what's so interesting, even before I became a happiness scholar, I learned how certain elements of my mindset really served me. And I learned all this through positive psychology. Now, what's interesting is here I am now, fast forward now 20 something years after my late husband was accidentally shot and killed. Here I am, happily engaged with a wonderful man and a phenomenal human being that I talk often about. And because he's just, Ken Lemon is just, that's my fiance's name. He's just a great person and great partner and great fiance. But the interesting part is, with the fact that I've had all of these different experiences, right? Notice how I can even talk about my present more positive, right? Or I can acknowledge the value in terms of my present. So what's interesting, when I tell people, no, I'm not happy 24 hours a day, because the interesting part is when I go through adversity or go through troubles, I become happier when I'm dealing with an increase in my positive emotions or having joy or having happiness, right? So it's almost like sadness, right? Having some of those dynamics allows me to appreciate and value when there's happiness. So I think that's important to share, because I think, when most people, especially when they see someone like me, because I happen to wear a smile, like, very easy.
You have a contagious smile, Kortni.
Yeah, like wow, and it's a big one, right? It's a very big one. But I think it's important for people to know what's behind that smile, right? Yeah. Because it's very easy for me to paint the picture in regards to, all the wonderful things in regards to happiness. But I think it's also important that picture shows the value in terms of when you have adversity or when you have hardships. And to be very honest with you, I value all of those different dynamics because they all make up levels of me. So when I'm talking to individuals and training different companies and organizations, I always talk about the value in regards to having some of those, negative experiences and how you can reframe them, right? Because I'm reframing elements of that in terms of serving as relates to building your resilience.
Absolutely, and it's important that we do reframe it. And I love the fact that to use the old cliche, you've been in communication, so you've heard it before, turning your pain into power, right? And using your pain for purpose, right? And I think that there's something very inspirational about that, because if we have experienced a lot of trauma in our lives, and I'm just saying that in terms of individual lives, there's almost this feeling like the God or the heavens is punishing us, is penalizing us. Why do things always happen to me like this? And why can I just be happy? And then we start to look at other people, we start to go on social media. They seem happy and I'm not happy, and all of those things. And it's like, we have to put things in a proper context.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think the point that you just made about sadness, and I had learned this early in my adult years, that you can't have happiness without sadness. Like in life, the duality exists and they have to work together. So you won't appreciate the sunshiny days if it never rains. That whole thing. So how do we make sure? Because we are in an age that emphasizes personal happiness. We are in the age that emphasizes that unless you have things, unless you wear a certain type of clothes, unless you drive a certain type of car, you're not happy.
Yeah. So
how do we balance those messages with the internal messages to get us into a place where we can be, as Beyonce said, we can be cozy in our own skin? And to look within for our happiness and not look without.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting you say that because when you're talking about all the materialistic items, which are, great, right, in terms of, dynamics, but it's interesting. One of the things that I found, and one of the things I really value in terms of the research is also the importance of meaning. What's meaningful to you? Right. So, it's interesting because this morning, like every morning, and I happen to not be in my home. I'm actually preparing for a journalism conference that's happening this week in Las Vegas. And my fiance and I are both here. He serves on the board of the organization. And like when we're home every day, when he's off, he always surprises me with my favorite cup of coffee. And didn't stop him from doing that.
Wait a minute, Kortni. Did you pay for that? Is that a Starbucks plug? I mean, what are you doing?
Well, look, I'll try to hide it as much as I can.
But whenever I'm feeling down, I get my favorite cup of coffee.
But what's so interesting? That is meaningful to me, right?
Huge.
And some people say, "Oh, it's just a cup of coffee."
No, my wife is the same way. If I make her a cup of coffee, if I go to your favorite place to get her coffee, just the way she likes it. It's like, you know what? I didn't make the wrong decision 10 years ago.
No, but think about it, how meaningful it is, because I'm like, my fiance took the time out this morning, way before I got up this morning. Went, in this case, went into the, the resort where we're staying, stayed in a very long line, right, to grab my favorite cup of coffee at my favorite place, right? But it's so meaningful because the fact of, first of him being president, knowing what I value, what I desire, but also as it relates to the fact that he did that. And he continues to do that every time he's off. Before I wake up in the morning, on my nightstand just happens to be that, Starbucks, in terms of that, my favorite brand, that is a cup of coffee. And so it's really also valuing the meaning, right? Because it's not simply, I'm just saying, oh gosh, it's the brand of the coffee per se, but really it's the meaning of the experience. So I think it's also important to reference, what are those really good positive experiences that you have in your life that are increasing your positive emotions in your life. For me, it's a cup of coffee, one of them. And it's also the value of knowing that. And so what's interesting is one of the things that I also like to share with individuals is being grateful. So it's not only the meaning behind, that favorite cup of coffee that I just mentioned, it's also the fact that I'm grateful. And that gratitude actually allows me to be present, and research supports it. It supports it in regards to helping us to lower stress. Supports it as it relates to, believe it or not, in regards to helping with our sleep. So when individuals tell me, oh gosh, I'm having, sleep issues, and I go, at night, you might want to start, counting your blessings, thinking about all the things that you're grateful for, opposed to, counting sheep that we, that's.
Yes. Come on, Kortni, come on.
Yeah. So
count your blessings, don't count sheep. Oh.
Count your blessings. And it's beautiful to do that. Absolutely.
I love it. I absolutely love it. All right, I want to bring my culture crew into this conversation, two dynamic women. We could join again by Lise Winnie, host of Millennials Anonymous podcast, and Iman Heath, who is an activist and an entrepreneur. Ladies, I know that in our internal chat, y'all was like, yes, happiness.
It was the gratitude part for me. I think people forget that part.
Count your gratitude. All right, Iman. All right, Iman.
You gotta be grateful.
Go ahead. So listening to Kortni, Dr. Kortni Alston here, Iman, what's going through your mind? Does it resonate for you? Because a lot of women and men are struggling right now in this country around the idea of being happy.
So first of all, Dr. Kortni, your hair looks good. Number one. Just
we all happy about that.
You're away from home.
So I think I would say, definitely from my personal experience, being grateful would help us at least remember where we were and where we are now. At least I can say it from my journey as far as being an entrepreneur. I remember worrying and crying about not having enough clients, to now it's like, dang, y'all, like, can I get a day off? But I'm still grateful that I'm this busy, because there was a time where I was crying and worrying like, dang, how am I going to pay these bills if I don't have these clients? And just stepping out on faith regardless, and then being guided through this journey the entire time without missing a beat. Like, it gets frustrating, and then sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, it's too much. But we have to be grateful. Gratitude eventually will come back to you. If you put the gratitude energy out into the universe, it will come back to you. But we just have to remember, we have to keep that in the forefront. Like she said, don't count sheep, count your blessings. It matters a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lise, what's your take?
I was just saying, like you said in the chat, I was like, I need me a happiness doctor. Where you get that at?
You take a mirror group.
Right. But I agree that gratitude, I think that's something that Americans struggle with just in general, especially with social media. And we're looking at all of these different people that it appears that they have more. And so we don't actually value the things that we do have. We look for all the things that we don't have. And so I myself need to really focus on that. So I couldn't agree more to really start being grateful and having that gratitude for the things you do have.
That is so on point. That is so true. That is so true. This is why I wanted to have this conversation, because the Gallup had put out a poll earlier this year talking about the issue of happiness. And they say that American happiness hits record lows. According to this poll, and Keena, let's put some numbers up. Thank you, sir. It says in 2020, before the pandemic began, an average of 48 Americans said they were satisfied. There was a big drop in 2021 when 41% indicated they were happy with what was going on in their 29 different metrics. Now, what this data indicates is that nearly 2 years into the pandemic in the United States, there has not been any real recovery in how Americans believe things are going. It said when you break it down by aspects of life and policy issues, the same story emerges. Just 41% are satisfied on the 7 aspects of life issues measured consistently over the last 2 decades. And these aspects include quality of life, the system of government and how it works, and the influence of organized religion. That 41% is statistically insignificantly different from the 39% who were satisfied last year, which was lowest on record. Now, on policy issues, 35% are satisfied on the 16 areas measured consistently over the last 2 decades. Some of these policy issues include the nation's abortion policies, the policies to reduce crime, the state of the economy, and the quality of education in our nation. This 35% is the lowest ever measured. Because there are more policy issues than aspects of life issues measured, this means that on average, Americans are less satisfied with the way things are going than at any point in the last 2 decades. Wow.
Yeah.
And guess what? Here's the thing about this, Kortni, Doc, and Lisa and Iman. The thing about it is things aren't necessarily getting better on the policy side, right? We're still getting hit. And I'm talking about as Black people, especially for y'all as women. I'm talking about where we are in this country and our relationship to the rest of the world. Things aren't really getting better. So now it's even more incumbent upon us to find some levels of personal happiness, because based on this data, it's showing that you're not going to be able to find happiness in your circumstances or things outside of yourself. Doc, can you speak to that?
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting because it's interesting because since the pandemic, I will say that being a happiness scholar has kept me really busy. Prior to pandemic, it was a conversation, but it's been a richer conversation since the pandemic has started. And of course, during the pandemic, we are being faced with so many different issues. And I think it's important to recognize those issues. I often share with individuals and organizations the importance of, it's okay not to be okay, but it's also important to honor your feelings along the way. So we're dealing with so many dynamics as it relates to the pandemic and in regards to what all of those different issues have created. And so I think what's also important to share is that things don't happen overnight, right? In terms of, being able to kind of get through is really interesting. I share a very interesting dynamic. One of my dear friends said this to me. She goes, if you think that, a vacation is going to help you from burnout, a 1 week vacation, it's just not going to do it. It's just not, you got to give yourself some time, right? And with all that being said, it's so important that we give ourselves I call it pacing ourselves throughout the process of giving ourselves that time to heal, to honor our feelings, but also to recognize, right, that, I'm not feeling very good right now, and thinking about what you can do that's going to really serve you, and honor. I always like to say, honor your feelings in terms of what you need.
Let me just tell you, and I might be wrong on this, sisters, but when people I go on taking vacation, I'm like, that is probably one of the most stressful periods, stressful moments for me, because, when you're trying to shove children along, trying to make sure you got money in the account, you go to the hotel, make sure you got the deposit, which we got to have another conversation about. When you're dealing with money, okay, you got to check in, you got to eat food. Okay, what's the activity? Where's the part where you rest? That's the part I'm trying to figure out. You know what I'm saying? I would be honest with you. Happiness is you wake up and you don't have nothing to do. That's just my happiness. You know what I mean? On a Sunday, I wake up. Hey, you guys want to go get some brunch? Let's take a walk, take a nice little hike. Not having things to do. And I always thought, spending money, traveling all over the place, which is cool, but all of that's attached to that. Once you get to the destination is one thing. Getting there is the stressful part. So I always thought that was pretty interesting. People I love traveling. That helps me. But it's either that I don't know how y'all do it, because y'all probably have to school me on how to travel without the stress, because I get stressed.
But it's so interesting that you share that. I'm so glad you're sharing that, Farajii, because it's also important to mention how really there's no one size fits all, right? And so what can make me happy and what is my, puts me in my quote happy place can be different for you, right? And so, for friends. So for friends of mine who are, who travel for a living, they're just they're in their happy place constantly. I can relate to what you shared, because I stressed out about going through TSA,
right.
What's going through the airport, right? But it's important to recognize, one of the things I value in terms of positive psychology, we talk about really kind of creating your own experience, your own kind of experimental process, I should say. So what does that look like in terms of experimenting with these things that you feel are going to increase your positive emotions, right? That may bring you joy and happiness and so forth, and saying, okay, well, like Farajii, the traveling doesn't do it, but, staying home and doing nothing that day does. Or it can simply be, hey, Dr. Kortni talked about gratitude, and I like writing in a gratitude journal. But wait, Dr. Kortni talked about writing. I use a gratitude jar, opposed to a journal. I like seeing my blessings continue to grow. And I will tell you guys a nice funny story. Again, I talk about my fiance all the time. So when my fiance and I were long distance, he actually gifted me. He created a gratitude jar of all the things he was grateful for as relates to our relationship. So it can. Nice. He's amazing. He's amazing.
I'm like dudes that be really doing it up real big. I'm kind of a hate on that in that respect.
But yeah, it's
like you always said. I'm glad my wife ain't on the show. Then I wouldn't be happy. You don't make me a gratitude jar.
But you see, it's all about finding really that happy medium for yourself. So honestly, I share, make sure that you're spending time assessing what's going to really work for you. And also giving yourself some credit along the way. Another great scholar, her name is Dr. Christian Neff. She is one of the leading scholars in self-compassion. And so it's important that, you practice self-compassion, because as you mentioned earlier about social comparison, going online, because really it's looking at everyone's highlight reel, right? In terms of all the wonderful things that are happening, but it's about practicing self-compassion with yourself in regards to how you're going to pace yourself in regards to, your own happiness journey as well.
Absolutely. Lise or Iman, y'all got any other questions for Dr. Kortni Alston as we talk about this?
Social media is my question. Do you think that social media has made, statistics even worse over the years as far as trying to have this picture perfect life and this microwave effect with society? Like you said, we have to pace ourselves, but we don't, to be honest. So do you think social media has created more of a negative effect than a positive effect on how Americans feel as far as
social media is an interesting dynamic, right? Because it has caused so much in terms of levels of stressors, right, for individuals in regards to, partly social comparison, looking, and also as it relates to body images, and there's so much other research as it relates to that area. That area in terms of social media. But it's interesting, but social media can also serve as a value, right, in terms of how it can connect us, and especially during the pandemic, right, when we were all socially distancing, right? And I'm still getting used to that. I'm like, oh wow, I'm still socially distancing at great length, even though we've kind of loosened those restrictions. But it still connected us, because what's really valuable for us as human beings is having that human connection. But it's also important, I think it's very key, is to make sure that you're being very careful in regards to some of the things that you may be looking at and how you're receiving those images, right? So if you're finding yourself looking at Facebook or in a Facebook group or on Instagram in particularly, and you're noticing, I'm not feeling very good about myself. These are things that you need to really start to acknowledge, right? And to think about, okay, how am I going to go about, serving myself? It may be, I've had several friends do this detox from social media for some time. And in terms of, thinking about, I'm going to remove myself. But it's really important to think about how you are, receiving that information. And it's also really impactful to understand. That's why self-compassion, I'm glad I shared that a moment ago, because self-compassion is all about how you treat, we talk about compassion, how we would treat other people. Self-compassion is treating yourself as your own bestie. And so if your girlfriend was coming to you and saying, wow, this is really upsetting me, you would tell your girlfriend, you would protect her. And it's important that we think about internally in terms of practicing self-compassion to protect ourselves too.
Absolutely. Let me take some of these comments as folks are checking in. Janice Washington. Janice, good to hear from you. You mentioned, I think people are not well rested, nor do they eat foods that help them stay focused and full as well. So you bring up that point that, now let me tell you, I'm a Taurus, so happiness is food for me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You want to make me happy, give me a good meal. You know what I'm saying? Then everything else just falls into place. I don't care if anything, it's like, the whole place can be burning up. But if I got that meal right in front of me, I'm just swinging my feet. You know what I mean? But no, that's a good point. Being well rested, because our minds and our bodies, we're constantly on the go. And, Doc, I think some of us tend to, we kind of come out of this culture where we're like, team no sleep, you know what I'm saying? I'm always grinding and all that. I used to be in that same place. Then after a while, I just like, man, how stupid am I? Like, I had to really check myself, because I'm like, bro, why are you happy that you don't get an adequate amount of sleep?
Nap time is essential. Nap time is essential, okay?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, if this show wasn't a time it would be on.
But that brings up a great point too about toxic positivity, because there's a lot of people that they go through, because that's I guess the question I have for, the doctor, like, it's a whole atmosphere that you can't feel any emotions. Like no sadness, no anger, no, like there's a toxic part of you can't feel. How do we adjust with that?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, I get a lot of questions about toxic positivity, and I'm so glad that, you know, that conversation exists, because I think, well, one of the reasons I will say this is because there's always an assumption, right? When you talk about happiness, that that is like it's devoid of any negativity, right? And what, you know, in terms of what you were sharing as relates to toxic positivity, you know, you can't, it's not healthy to have an existence where you're not acknowledging, you know, when negative things are happening, or acknowledging your feelings as it relates to what you're going through. And so it's really important to make sure you do that. Now, it's interesting, one of the things I often share with individuals, and it's funny because one of my dear friends, she also talks about toxic positivity quite a bit, and that is the value of having positive relationships. And it's one of the reasons why I value positive psychology so much, is because it's not simply, hey, relationships, is qualifying it, positive relationships, right? And so I often share with individuals the importance of how research supports how it can help as it relates to building our resilience, helps with as it relates to our support. And so I say that so when you're going through negative experiences, that you can have really these great support systems, your positive relationships to serve you, that I happen to love calling my self-care squad. And so your self-care squad can really serve you in terms of helping you acknowledge when negative things happen, opposed to, you know, just sweeping it under the rug, not seeing you, right? Because that can make you feel really invisible when someone is not acknowledging, you know, your feelings. And I think it's important when you have your self-care squad. My self-care squad, I will tell you, is filled with quite a few, all of them are empathetic human beings that don't believe in dismissing, you know, feelings, and also don't believe in just fixing you. We believe in empowering each other and listening to each other.
I love that.
And so, yeah, I think that will also help serve individuals if they're going through toxic positivity, especially if it's at work, or maybe it might be within other groups, right? To really make you feel seen, because that's really important, right? Being seen, safe, and supported.
Wow.
Let me tell you, a self-care squad. I love that. I love that. Seriously. No, seriously. I really do. Because summertime, you know, and we had a conversation about this, your network, right? The people that you surround yourself most, like if they are not empowering you, if they're not enriching you, if they, you know, you have some wild out there and they're like, yeah, girl, I'm down for whatever, you know, and it's like, you don't have somebody to bounce off ideas, or really, like you said, see you. Because sometimes our closest friends, they might have been friends with us since we were in high school. We're in our 30s and 40s.
They might low-key envy you. They
low-key envy you. But Iman, what about the friends that don't see your growth? You know what I'm saying? Like you, they be like, girl, you used to like this, and you be like, girl, that was like back in high school. I'm in my 30s.
Right.
Like, girl, you used to like the dudes like that. Be like, girl, I went to 3 bad relationships with that type of dude. I'm trying to move the hell on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, the self-care squad. I love that. Y'all, hey, yo, look, to the online culture crew, self-care squad. We gotta have a self-care squad. I absolutely love that. Look, Doc, we gotta, you know, take a quick pause, but I appreciate you. How can people get more information about positive psychology and learning about how to make sure that they can really cultivate their happiness in light of and in spite of all the things that is happening around us?
Absolutely. Well, you know, there's a couple of ways you can come. You've actually visit my website at drkortnialston.com, or you can listen to my podcast. I host a podcast called the Courting Happiness Podcast, and it's fueled by positive psychology. And it's all about helping individuals and organizations with workplace well-being, and also building and developing their happiness journey too. So I hope I can, you know, see you there. And again, my website shares a lot of great resources to serve you as well.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
There it is right there, folks. Dr. Kortni Alston, the happiness scholar. Hey, Doc, we got some folks that are have tuned in online and they say, you got to bring her back. So guess what we're going to have to do? Bring you back.
Well, thank you. Well, look, hey, how about this? I am grateful for each and every one of you. So thank you so much for, making me even happier today.
Absolutely. And enjoy your time. We maybe circle back because we may just have to have a conversation about this year's NABJ conference. For those who don't know, Dr. Kortni Alston has been a reporter, a television reporter. She's reported news, a news director. So she has been doing communications work for a very, very long time. And she's still able to smile about it, even in spite of the craziness of the industry. So, Dr. Kortni Alston, I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us and being so good for the culture today.
Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. It's been an honor.
It's time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A Black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?